Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transfer Show here on Anfield Index. And I am, of course, joined by Mr. Dave Davis to talk you through all the latest stories. Just 1 second, Dave. just bear with me here. Yeah. There we go. Cheers, butter.
Cheers, people. Enjoy your weekends.
I hope you all enjoy yourselves because, unlike me, I hope you have been enjoying yourselves. I didn't absolutely take on board what we were doing, what we had done. It didn't register until I saw Arne Slot on holidays when there's a game to prepare for, and I realized what a massive nerd I was, worrying about points totals and records for Mo. So from now on, it's all about celebration. And even during this show, I hope you'll forgive me, folks, but I'm going to be on the beer as we speak because we have some very interesting news and we need to get cracking, Dave, because there's just about an hour's worth of stuff if we go fast. Probably the big one that we want to start with is the one that has the most. Well, we could start with the most exciting. Maybe we'll save that because it doesn't have as much legs as the more realistic one that seems to be all but done. We've spoken on this show now for many weeks about Frimpong, and it looks as if that is almost over the line.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's been brewing for a while, and bar the shouting, this all feels done. The only reason it's not done right this second is Bayer Leverkusen have got a game tomorrow, haven't they, to finish the German season, who, funnily enough, are a team we're keeping a big eye on now all of a sudden, realistically, for their last game. But once that's done, Liverpool, as many journalists you can see on the screen, it's had the Ornstein bomb, Joy, every journalist you can pretty much name has said that Liverpool are going to trigger this release clause for Jeremie Frimpong. And naturally, it's been a case of digging to get any details on this. The big thing that we had, that most things out there, don't get me wrong, but the big thing we had on this, Trev, is that the fee, I think everyone knows it, around the 30 million quid mark. But the big thing about his wages, it'll be one of those 5 with an option for a 6-year deal. But because of their amount, they're almost seeing as they're saving against Frimpong, against what Trent's wages are currently, the deal almost pays for itself a little bit in that sense, which makes it even more attractive, along with the homegrown, the price tag, all those types of things as well. So, yeah, barring the screaming and shouting, it might even be tomorrow. We just don't know realistically, but everyone is just waiting for the announcement that here we go for Jeremie Frimpong to be joining Liverpool.
It's kind of cringeworthy, isn't it, that we've all decided to just go with it, give in and adapt the here we go, because actually, you know what? He's fucking good at catchphrases, is that the Italian lad, fair play to him. So is there anything else we need to tease out on this in terms of details? You've given us a theoretical contract duration. We're expecting that he'll be on good but not frightening wages.
No.
And the kid himself, from what I can hear, although, there was, last time we spoke, an awful lot of people were saying that a huge amount of this stuff was coming from not even his agent, but a Frimpong adjacent sort of a lad who was doing a lot of the
company, yeah.
Yes, who was doing a lot of the talking. So what's changed between then and now in terms of where you're feeling in terms of confidence with this?
Yeah, we said it last week. A lot of this was we bet it would happen because of all the smoke and all the noise, which is exactly what we said. But we wanted to be honest, and a lot of the noise was coming from his management company and bits around that. But obviously, the smoke, there's noise for a reason, and Liverpool decided to pull the trigger on this. And we did it on Transfer Market Metrics with Bart's and talked about analysts. And one of the things I enjoyed about that show was I was able to prove that my geek was better than Bart's, to be honest, and had more of an analyst and a little bit things on there, which was quite funny. But the big thing about getting Frimpong and Kirkes in, because we talked about this last week, are like, are we not going to defend anymore? Is this not the plan? Are we just going to win every game 5-4? And one of the big things, as me and Bart's chatted about, we got from the analyst was The big thing about Kirkes and Frimpong from a defensive element, they will protect us in transition, counter-attack. That's a big thing the analysts believe. Their pace, their recovery runs can be really valuable that way. And also, it's a bit like the money ball, that Billy Bean quote, isn't it? That like, he gets on base. Do I care if it's a run or a walk? They get on base. The one thing Frimpong and Kirkes do, Trev, is they get the ball in the box. Now, that's not just a get to the byline old style winger and cross it back. It can be through a pass across, whatever it may be. But Frimpong is third in the Bundesliga. Kirkes is third in the Premier League from crosses or into the box, which can be on the floor, pass into the box, however you want to describe it. So that also factors into it in the style you think we can play. Well, I was saying fullbacks because I think everyone knows this. They could use him higher up or they could change the style a little bit with Frimpong. It gives that flexibility. So I'm a bit like you. Do I have reservations? Yeah. But it's Friday. We're giddy. We did one of these on Tuesdays and the stories just keep coming. So, like, fuck it. Let's just run with it now. If you can't beat them, join them, eh?
I'm exactly in the same place. The logic has gone out the window for a Friday evening. I can't help but notice that you've mentioned Kirkes quite a lot there, which people probably picked up on. It's not as part of our show this evening. Are you speaking about him in the way you were speaking about Frimpong last week, with a feeling that it's looking like it's highly likely because it just won't go away?
Yeah, I think we can be honest on this. Do I have that imminent or anything like that? No, not leaning into that at all. But because of all the smoke, all the things we said previously, I think 90% of Liverpool fan base would be, if it didn't happen or we pulled out or it was just a smokescreen, I think they'd be honest. They'd be a little surprised, wouldn't they? Yes, Liverpool love a smokescreen. Don't get me wrong. But I think we'd all be surprised if Kirkes wasn't the serious target now.
And we might as well fold in the slightly sort of sobering story in here before we get to the giddy excitement part again, which is, we've talked about Frimpong, we've talked about his attacking qualities. Everyone is aware of that, and it is highly exciting. And we are going there on a Friday evening. But one thing we haven't got down on our roster, but you and I spoke about before the mics went live, was the poor lad who'll have to do a lot of covering for Frimpong. Theoretically is Ibu Konate, and yet we are still, aren't we, where we were, which is the sounds are either not there or a little bit negative in terms of his contract. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's not really another way of pitching it at all, to be honest. There's no monitoring, covering, looking at this. This is not, I've not got anyone that can give us good news at all around this. That it seems to be that contract talks still aren't progressing. In fact, there's more people you can get that, you know, as you know, from the screenshots and the things we share, that seem to be can't get nothing. It seems to be a bit of a worrying silence. So I think a lot of people are starting to steer into that. Well, if he doesn't sign, he's going to have to go. And then we're back to that conversation last week, aren't we, where we said, well, that's great, but so you're going to go PSG probably over Real Madrid and all those theoretical discussions. But all clubs will also know he's got a year left to go at the same time as well. So it's basically, there's nothing good around that conversation right now.
Yeah, especially when we fold in the fact that the guy that we had been lining up, the exciting young kid that is Tyson, has hitched his wagon to Real. So interesting times ahead there. And certainly this will be a more complex area that we'll be covering on further shows, because there's no choice in the matter, it seems. But to get back into Friday evening beer garden mode, and it is absolutely sort of splitting the stones here in Ireland, and I feel like having a little bit of a fanciful chat. Now, keep the ludicrous, don't believe it, are you stupid comments out of the chats, please. We have a reason why we're dealing with the Florian Wirtz thing. And I've already done about 70 million cynical tweets on X or whatever it's called these days about the likelihood of Liverpool getting this guy. Yeah. And it just keeps getting a little bit better in terms of the possibility. It's a little bit of a long shot, to say the least. But it doesn't seem to be just as absolutely laughable as it had been in the past. Talk us through where we're at with this, because there's a lot, isn't there? There's quite a few details here.
I mean, we talked about Tijuana Tacos last week, didn't we? And Liverpool looking for top shelf, elite attackers. And we can be honest and said this wasn't a name that we knew or discussed in the mix. But what a wet, like how this just dropped. And this is where I think, as fans, that people we mock and we talk about nerds and laptops and all this, etc., blah, blah, blah. No one had Florian Wirtz getting on a plane on Tuesday and speaking to like Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, which, had stood up, came to Liverpool, had a chat with his parents, with his entourage, looked at the surrounding area. Like Liverpool, if we were a company, we've laid out our best pitch, is the way I would put it. Liverpool have made a hard pitch to Florian Wirtz, as in, come here, come and be a star, come and be a hero. They've rolled out the red carpet. They've kept good relations with his camp. They've made it clear, we are trying for this one. This is not a like pie in the sky, transfershagger.com, rumor. This is genuinely serious. And on the screen, as David Ornstein put, like Liverpool have made contact. That meeting has taken place, Trev. So there's a couple of things to this. Let's start at the point where everyone negative will start. People will be Bayern Munich. I think Liverpool expect that to probably still be the case somewhat, and they understand that. But they can't just let a chance to get an elite talent pass by at all. At the same time, we've done the pitch. We know that. We're ready to pay the money. Leverkusen are giving us every encouraging sign in the world to get a bid on the table if Bayern do the same, which is fully expected. So I just pulled a few quotes from different bits. It's important to say. So shout out a few names. Shout out to Chris Williams, who's covered the Bundesliga for a number of the years and is a Liverpool fan as well. And he tweeted, Leverkusen were more open to selling Wirtz abroad than to Bayern. Can easily envisage a situation whereby any bid matched by a Premier League club would be accepted over Bayern's. Leverkusen do not want him to go. And we got that a couple of times this week, that Leverkusen are trying to avoid this at all costs. And if you don't believe that, let's just look at this quote from the Leverkusen CEO about Max Eberl. Fernando Caro. Well, I think nothing of Max Eberl. Absolutely nothing, ! And I wouldn't negotiate with him.
Wow.
Leverkusen hate Bayern. They do not want to sell their star boy to Bayern at all. Now, this is important to say for digging. I don't want to go too fast on this, actually. There's an expectation that Bayern put a bid on the table quite soon, that is just to start the process. And it sounds crazy to say this, but like 100 million euros just to start the process. Knowing full well it's going to be rejected. But it's to show Wirtz they're serious. And the other thing to say is, and we'll come on to some of the troubles they've got, Bayern aren't just finding this easy to come up with cash-wise, because they got contracts to sort, as we talked about, players that they're trying to move on, renew, all sorts of things going on. So the Bayern propaganda machine, the Christian Folks, the Altobellis of this, they are in overdrive trying to help this. But the big thing to also call out with this, and we got this from a good few sources, the Wirtz camp hates that. The Wirtz camp are not about propaganda, transfer stories. They want to pick where they think his best career development is. Where's the best project for trophies and all that? They're not about things coming out. When sensationalism, that's the antithesis of what Wirtz is in camp are all about, we're being told. So the reason still to be giddy is Bayern could play themselves out of it. And this could also unfold in the sense of the first bid is going to be rejected. Of course it is. But then it starts, doesn't it? And it'll start to get a bit higher, at which point there's a full expectation that Liverpool and Manchester City put bids on the table. At which point, it's quite clear. You can see on the quote on the screen where Leverkusen want him to go. So then the only way that Wirtz gets that is if he comes out, publicly and says, no, I want to move to Bayern. At which point, the hometown hero is no more somewhat, isn't he, at the same time? So there's so much drama in the mix almost with this. But just to be clear, he has met Liverpool. Liverpool have made a pitch. Wirtz and his people were in England this week. There's a chance. Is there a likelihood? I will not say that. That would just be a lie. But there's a real chance.
Malcolm in the chat is wondering about City as a rival for him if he did, for some reason, not pick up the most obvious move, which is to Bayern. I've heard stuff, but the stuff I've heard honestly seems opinion rather than any fact whatsoever. It's people saying that, the camp prefers Liverpool or that City are second favourites. Now, people can say anything, can't they, online? Right. I haven't heard anything that would stand up to any scrutiny at all. In terms of City as a rival, I mean, let's be honest, they're up until this season record, and Guardiola himself, there's a lot of pull there, man. We have to be very realistic about what they would be by way of a rival should he decide that Germany is not where he's going to continue his career.
Yeah, the only, and again, you're right, because people can tweet. I'm not saying it's wrong. We're all entitled to our opinion. But the only thing I really got on that from City is, yes, City is still in the race. Absolutely. If it comes down to pure wages, City are going to blow everyone out the water. But that's not what's believed from the Wirtz camp, that's not a driver. But I'm always reluctant on that when people say it's not about the money. Well, money can sway things. That's not derogatory. These boys are obviously dealing with their careers and their futures and all that. It just is what it is a little bit with the money. But the big thing we got from the City point of view, which could work against them, is everyone knows that Pep's clock is ticking. Players signing for Manchester City now are not back in the day when it was like Kevin De Bruyne and Silva of, 6-7 years ago, as in like this is going to be a long-term project. Everyone knows Pep's tired. Pep's put a time limit on when he's going as well. So that just right now, that isn't working in their favour is all I had on that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's exactly where I landed with it as well, is that it is a finite period that Guardiola is going to be around for. Man, it's exciting. And I'm just like you said earlier on, let's just lean into the excitement of the whatever small percentage possibility it is. Let's just enjoy the possibility of it. Now, we said earlier on that, with the way things are with Ibu's contract, there is a good chance we're going to need to get a centre-half. We were looking at getting a centre-half regardless. And we still don't know what's going to happen with, say, the likes of Kwanzaa and Joe Gomez in terms of their futures at the club. So recruitment at centre-half seems like it's going to be a thing. Now, you dropped a name last week, and we were amongst the first, we were the first people that I heard with this name. And now it turns out that there's actually quite a lot to this. Just remind folks who we were speaking about last week and of the qualities that this kid has.
Yeah, we kind of said we'd heard a name, but it wasn't really our name to drop because we didn't have it, and then we couldn't get it stood up straight away. But fair play, and he's an annoying smug git at times, Sam Maguire. But yeah, he got it stood up. He got info, and it's his exclusive, isn't it? So Thomas Araujo, however you want to pronounce it, the Portuguese international, an interesting player because people will go, "Oh, he's a right back." No, he's not. He's a centre back who also plays right back, like a certain Joe Gomez at the same time, but has played it quite a bit for Benfica recently. 6'1", 61% aerial duel success. So they're not a behemoth like a Canati style at all, but very respectable. And if people will jump on that and saying, well, that's low, it's about what Huijsen is as well, isn't it? And well, we're looking at him seriously. So, you got to have the balance. You can't be hypocritical. The other big thing to say about him is rapid. Absolutely rapid. And we kind of spoke off air about this because pace, not smallest, but not the biggest, and can cover right back. That sounds very much like a Joe Gomez almost, doesn't it? Like that type of player. And you wonder a little bit of 18-19 Liverpool, where Virgil was the aerial dominant one that could pass it, and Joe Gomez was the quick on the cover one that could also just run it out on occasions when he needed to. And that's another strength of Arroyo, is that sort of carrying option, because he's quick as well, isn't he? So that's an option at the same time. So you never know. And he wouldn't be cheap at all, as Sam's article talks about with his release clause. But yeah, definitely had it stood up. It's Sam's exclusive, important to say that. But yeah, had it stood up as well, Liverpool are definitely looking at Arroyo.
And you said that Sam mentioned in his article the release clause amount. Do you happen to recall that off the top of your head?
I think it's around 70 million euros, if I'm right. Someone who might have read it might correct me in the chat panel. And I get it. I also think when you put that image on screen, as soon as you mention a Benfica player, everyone will be, no, Nunes, no, pull emergency, like don't say like that. But they're not all Darwin Nunes, are they? So that's important to remember. There's a lot to like with this guy.
Yeah. It seems like everyone we're interested in comes with quite a hefty tag, with the exception of the most likely signing so far, which we covered at the top of the show. Now, a fella who has won hearts and minds left, right, and center is our Italian chum, Federico Chiesa. Seems to be incredibly popular with the other players. He is popular with the fans. He's got a belter song. Anytime he gets on the field, he does well. It's just that our man Wayne Lineker's mate doesn't fancy him. So we have to be realistic about his future at the club. He costs 10 million, we believe. I'm not sure if we had to pay the full amount of that. And so we're not talking about dramatic swings either way. And you would imagine Liverpool could recoup their money were they to sell. But a sale doesn't seem to be the most likely story at the moment, Dave.
No, it was the Gazzetta story, which, without being derogatory, sometimes it's just absolute nonsense. So, you know, we went digging on this because it didn't have anything sort of on Tuesday, whenever it was, about this loan and going back. But actually, a loan's important to say, that getting a bit of info on it this week, as you know, that wages are a little bit prohibitive for the Italian clubs. They're never as big wages, are they? Never as big a payer. So getting Federico off the books, and before anyone jumps in, because he, like you said, he is just a cult hero, and he has got a banging tune that loves being sung on the concourse. But, you know, we hear the song more than we see the player, so we've got to put that in the mix. Of course, he's free to leave Anfield, but the wages, from what we have, are making it a little bit difficult, as in it could even be one of those where people won't like to hear this, but we only share what we get. An Italian club maybe takes on, you know, like 50, 60% of the wages, and Liverpool pay the other percentage in that regard, just so it's a bit prohibitive. And Liverpool, yeah, of course, they're looking, if that happens, for an obligation. The Italian clubs will want to pay or have an option in that regard as well. So I think people, just brace yourselves. Everyone's cult hero's time is coming to an end. And it might not be the deal everyone's wanting either. But you never know.
I think, having lived through the horror of a certain Liverpool centre half never being released from the club and being kept for all Nat against his will for so many years, I think everyone would just want to see Federico Chiesa playing football. We'd ideally like to see him playing football for Liverpool. We're all realistic enough to know that that doesn't seem to be a potential future for him. So I really, really hope that, even if it means like taking some sort of financial hit or whatever, that he's allowed to be freed up to actually play football somewhere and be part of a thing going forward. He genuinely seems like a lovely lad, and he's clearly a very talented footballer. Part of me, though, I'll be honest, hopes we keep him hanging around and there's some sort of wild redemption thing where he comes in and does really well in the season to come, as we make it 21-7, because that's all we care about, if we're being perfectly honest. We've saved the best to last, haven't we, buddy? We've saved the best to last, and it's a name that's been mentioned a few times in the chat thread, and you and I had a bit of a giddy conversation about this possibility just before the mics went live here. because obviously the Wirtz thing is it's exciting. It's Friday evening beer garden chat, but we know it's a long shot. But is there a possible, more likely, more local target that will get everybody excited? I'm going to leave you to walk us through this whole story.
Yeah, we've talked about midfielders, and we've been quite honest to say the names that we've got have included Dario Suso, as we said, from Sporting Lisbon, Tom Bischoff from Hoffenheim, Kone from Reims, and it seemed to be, like a secondary midfielder potential. And we'd said specifically, people, we know you want us to say the names of Wharton, Belabor, etc., but we're not getting them, so not going to lie to you and say it. Okay, we got one. We got a name. We got one of them. Adam Wharton, currently at Crystal Palace, and got a few bits on it this week as well. That Liverpool are making a move for Adam Wharton. Liverpool do like him. And people will then ask about the fee. Information that it would be up to or around a max of £70 million. That there isn't a sort of as it was described to us, a gentleman's agreement with Palace in that way. And other info is that we got Wharton himself, ambitious kid, but him and his camp want to come back up north. And naturally, there's us. But this is maybe the bit to mention that's important as well. City are absolutely in the mix for Adam Wharton as well. People shouldn't forget they made a bid for him in January. It was a bit of a cheeky bid. They knew it would get rejected, really, but it was more to show the intent to Wharton's camp that, that they were still interested in him. So he will absolutely be a City target as well. We're all waiting for it to sort of start moving, but saying it honestly, nothing on Belabor at all. Don't want to pretend that for 1 second to us. But as of this week, Adam Wharton is of real interest to Liverpool, is what we have.
I mean, I think I can hear people getting excited literally across the land about that possibility. We can all imagine what that kid could be in this team. Like you said, hugely ambitious on a level, something you told me before that we'll save for some other time. Yeah. I wasn't prepared for at all. But I like that. And of course, I saw somebody saying in the chat there, it's a good observation. It seems like Chelsea's going for everyone we're going for, and we're very used to that. And you and I spoke just before we started about how Real Madrid are constantly copying Liverpool's homework. Yeah, well, you see, there is a finite amount of fantastic footballers, and there are a lot of clubs who consider themselves to be fantastic destinations. We just happen to be the champions. We just happen to be at the start of a project. And I think this is going to swing at least one of these bigger names to us. And I'd be very optimistic about the Wharton thing. That's really, really interesting. Is there anything else on that at all that we can give folks, or we just leave it at that? You did mention that the Ornstein link, didn't you? That it was that was a thing.
Yeah, because David Ornstein, people were like, who's he referring to? As mentioned, as he said on his, I think it's NBC, he does it with, isn't it? Said that, his information, Liverpool are in for multiple players right now and multiple deals, of well-known players as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to get giddy because you can only work on the info you've got. And 4 people go, you're just saying Wharton for a name. Well, we'd be a great big bunch of tits if we spent all summer so far going, we haven't got Wharton, would we? And then to say, we've got the info this week, it is what it is. But I'm trying not to get too excited that our info right now is Liverpool are in the mix for Wirtz and Wharton, which to me would just be a massive W for the summer, wouldn't it? Let's be honest, Trev. That is enough to send anyone giddy.
Oh, man. Seriously. It changes. It could be such a game changer. And regardless, we are going to see a very, very altered squad and a new way of playing football, I think, in the season ahead. And it's just massively exciting. Now that I finally realised that we're champions. We should move away from Liverpool just for a while then and look at the Premier League. And we've started speaking about City, and City obviously are going to be sticking their oar in for Wirtz. You already mentioned they're going to be sticking their oar in and have already done so with Wharton. But there are two other names that are more strongly linked with City at the moment for midfield. And of course, they do have Rodri coming back as well, as I see a conversation going on in the chats about like where exactly would Wharton fit in if Rodri is going to play for another couple of seasons. He's back completely fit. So who is it that we're seeing City being linked with? I know there's at least one AC Milan footballer. I thought there was one other big link too.
City, for our info, want two midfielders for the summer, two starters. And as well, it's important to say that I think everyone knows that De Bruyne is going, unless you've been living under a rock. Bernardo Silva wants out at the same time as well. Kovacic has seen better days. Gundogan's on his last legs practically as well. So Pep wants two starters. And I'm sure people have seen this one, but on the screen, Reinders, I think it's pronounced at AC Milan, they see him as an 8 that they like. But they're looking at, again, a bit like us, different options, but they're focusing on midfield, and which, until now, as we have to be honest, we didn't have Adam Wharton there. But Wharton, Wirtz, they're in the mix for those two players. Reinders as well. There probably is another that I've left off, but that's the big thing to say. I think there is another somewhere. Even, Xavi Simons, they'd inquired about as well. That isn't the name, though. I know what you mean. It's annoying me now. We're thinking.
Yeah, me too. It's more of a De Bruyne replacement.
It's Gibbs White.
Gibbs White.
That's the other one. Bloody annoying because we said about him for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. To him as well. So, in simple terms, people go, they can't. Well, this is how transfers work, isn't it? If you want a midfielder, you don't just make an offer to one midfielder. They want two. It'll be about who they can get, isn't it? So I think Reinders seems one of the more likely ones because of AC Milan's financial stay and, being keen to come and probably get a massive wage bump. But I'm not going to lie. I said this to you and I'm liking it less as the weeks go on. I think City are going to be our biggest challengers next season, Trev. I think with Rodri back, and say it's two, say it is like a Reinders and a Gibbs White, or it could be a Wharton or a Wirtz, they take from us at the same time as well. City would have a real midfield with legs again then, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and it's just about whether they can keep Cyborg 3000 fit up front, because if that's the case, they're not going to do what they did this season, and their current form as the season closes is outrageously good. So, it's very good. So it's not going to fall off a cliff. I think you're right. I think they will be stronger challengers than Arsenal, and very worth monitoring where their moves go. I still have a little bit of mini hope that something happens and Pep heads for the hills this summer, but that seems less and less likely. We mentioned earlier on, just to confirm it, the Hoyson to Real thing did become more real during the week, didn't it?
Yeah. We always said, and actually, I think a lot of people got high on this because it had been linked for so long and the kid, but I think you made a fair point last week. Why are we all getting a giddy on a player we know wants to play for a different club and we're settling for us as his backup option? So this was known. It was publicly known. Alonso's there. He's pushed for this. This is an easy deal to do. He wants to go to Real Madrid. Real Madrid want a young centre-half to develop. Spanish, homegrown and all that. So, I've seen people I'm really gutted on this week. I'm really not. Hoyson is going to Real Madrid. And also, with the greatest of respect, the leap from Bournemouth to Real Madrid and playing under that pressure and in the champion, when the white flags can come out, will be interesting to see how he does as well. But I'm not as down on this move as other Liverpool fans are. It's just, we were all just waiting for Real to come in, and they did.
I'm going to be honest with you. There's something about Hoyson's head and haircut. He just looks like, I would say, an amalgam of most of the young lads that I have to sort of wrangle into shape every day around the 900 young lads that I work with. So, I mean, I'm not even vaguely worried about this, to be honest with you. And it's as simple as that. If a guy is going to be always with one eye on the next step, then honestly, how shall I put this in a really sort of fuck that guy, basically, would be what I'd say. It's not, if Liverpool isn't your destination club, I'm not really that interested. Whether that's self-defeating or not, honestly, who cares? There are lots of other bits going on. And, the Champions League thing is it's the only thing keeping the Premier League alive. I'm sure they're absolutely blessing themselves or whatever their chosen religion gesture is about the fact that it is such a competitive chase, because everything else has been done and dusted for weeks, and the Champions League thing is still alive. Villa are going to be in the mix, and Villa will want to hang on to their best players. We know they have a couple of high-profile loans at the moment. One of those is Marcus Rashford. What's the story there?
Yeah, obviously Villa are trying to get Champions League. They've got the PSR issues. They know, so it's going to be a really interesting one there. We've talked about Morgan Rogers and what could happen to him at the same time as well. But the big thing and it came out, as probably people could see on the screen there, about Rashford could make a move to one of the rivals, that he wants to join a Champions League side. And got this stood up that Marcus Rashford's team have basically been speaking to other teams that are going to be in the Champions League and saying, would you take him? And also, just to be clear, Rashford doesn't want to go back to United. United, expect to sell him and have his money on the books and book that as, 40 million under the PSR rules as well. So they're happy to pretty much sanction it as well. It's going to be interesting, because if Villa don't get Champions League, I don't know how many would be keen on Marcus Rashford, Trev. That's probably a discussion for another day, isn't it? Like pedigree, homegrown, but his age, concerns about off-the-field stuff. And that's not to be, derogatory, because I always respect Marcus Rashford for what he does with the school kids' meals, and all things like that. I think that's brilliant. But from a footballing point of view, you do wonder what will happen if Villa don't get Champions League.
I think for Rashford as well, it seems to be very much part of the mix that he'll want really good money. Yeah. And that's going to really whittle down the amount of clubs that would be interested in taking him on, because nobody wants to pay big wages. It's just a matter of how much you believe in him as a talent. Do you think the spell at Villa has rehabilitated him in terms of people's opinion and in terms of maybe his own form?
Yeah, I think another injury didn't help, but up until the injury, he was getting a few goals, wasn't he? He was looking lively, was doing quite well, it's fair to say, in Champions League games where Villa were doing well at the same time. So I do think that will have drawn quite a few eyes. There'll always just be that thing, as you know, from other clubs going, yeah, but what about his wages? Because he is supposed to be on like 350, a stupid contract United gave him before all this happened as well. So that will come into the mix. But yeah, I think he'll have admirers, but it's what they'll go to and how much wage he might have to sacrifice to get it done.
So a lot of clubs a lot of those Champions League hopefuls are looking at a situation, aren't they, Dave, where they're going to have to offload one or two of their very top players just when they need them most. Now, the only ones who don't have to do that are Newcastle, because of their financial sort of situation. Well, City too, obviously, but we don't consider City to be anything other than money bags. But there'll be, it's going to be an issue, isn't it? Is it fair to say that, though? Maybe I'm kind of defeating my own argument here, because I've just thought of Chelsea too. Chelsea really don't have to do the whole selling thing. Well, we know they're just going to do what they want to do, right? So I don't know. It's a complicated one.
It's a hard one, because Newcastle made a few sales to obviously help them, and you expect them to get the Champions League. So they probably won't have as much money to spend as they like because of that. But there's no suggestion right now they're like at the Villa level of like, we need a sale really here, or we're going to be in trouble type of thing. City, Yeah, City, they've obviously been fine. They spent big in January, but they're well under that. People forget with City, they've sold a lot of youth team players or a lot of second string, and their books, whether you agree with them or not, balance a little bit there at the same time. Chelsea will sell their table tennis table kit back to themselves, won't they, for 500 million or something, or like flipping the doorstop on Sweeney Todd's office or something like that as well. So you kind of just ignore them a little bit. But Villa are definitely the ones I'm intrigued by as to who might have to see a mini exodus if they don't get it.
Yeah, and I know who your top target is because we've mentioned it before. One that we'd love to have at our club, but we'll get there again if it becomes a story. 2 Premier League clubs left to mention. Then we'll start with Newcastle, who we've already flagged up because of the sort of comfortable financial situation. But of course, they can be as comfortable as they like. But theoretically, they should be in line with PSR, and that may require sales. And of course, all of this is going to get much more rigid or much more flimsy. We see Chelsea with their incredibly inventive ways of flouting the law, which still seems to stay within the law. We know City are on the rack with some charges, and everyone's watching to see how seriously those will be taken. And so we wonder with Newcastle, are Newcastle going to keep doing what? Honestly, they seem to be doing quite well. I mean, they've bought well. They haven't gone completely mental. They've stayed roughly within the thing whilst flexing their financial muscle. They've hung on to Eddie Howe, who, credit where it's due, has done a good job, rather than going for a big name appointment immediately. Although I think he would be dumped the second it fell off the cliff for them. But Newcastle are looking to do some bits, and we still are dreaming of Alexander Isak, primarily because theoretically they're going to have to stick by the rules. What's going on at Newcastle at the moment?
Yeah, there's names keep coming up for departures. I mean, we've talked before about Isak and obviously the difficulties of that. They don't need to revisit that, but we mentioned Anthony Gordon before, that he was looked at by us again, and Arsenal were in the mix as well. That even now, Harvey Barnes is being mentioned as a target for other clubs because of his age. He's had a good end to the season, but he could be another one, to help raise a bit of money. But the one thing we've known, and we said before, Newcastle are after another attacking option. We mentioned Mbuemo before, who they've had a really good look at. They had a look at Kuna, although that seems destined for United, doesn't he? So that one's done. And the latest name is, a club that could just be being shellacked completely at the moment by Leverkusen's Victor Boniface there. He's not had the best of campaigns. It's suggestions he's fallen out with Xabi Alonso a bit, but Newcastle are having a serious look at him. So they are an interesting one because you expect them to get Champions League. You never know, but you look at the table now, the games that are left, and people will say, well, they've got Arsenal at the weekend away. I get that, but a win should do it for them out the last 2 games. You expect it to, happen with the last game being at home. So Newcastle will bring, if they get Champions League, another attacker in. Boniface is the latest name, but we will have to see if it is him or someone else.
It's a really interesting point you mentioned there. So, Leverkusen are looking at losing their manager. Their very, very biggest world star. They're used, like every other club in that league, to being poached by Bayern if anyone good comes up, and they've lost big name stars in the past. This could be really, really, really damaging for them this summer. We'll have to keep an eye on that, because they could embrace it and just say, right, fire sale time, and we'll just start again because we've had our joy. And, there's ways of looking at it. Last one then in the Premier League to talk about today is Brighton, because there are a couple of things going on. They're casting their eyes as far as South America. And one of the players that Liverpool was linked with is still being linked with an exit.
Yeah, João Pedro, that name keeps coming up. And various stories that people have seen the reports that Liverpool are still interested, Chelsea and others. I just think in the nicest way, and I'm not saying it, I think he is a talented player, he's a Brazilian international, but it's not been a stellar season for him, hasn't it? I think that was probably going to damage his options of a summer move. But Brighton are looking to move him on. That's important to say. Brighton are quite happy. They're looking for that bid to come in. So they do move João Pedro on. So you've got to bring that into the mix. And it's another one of these on the screen. David Ornstein mentioned it as well. Probably pronouncing his name wrong, but Cubano, then that's a style of dancing maybe, but Botafogo, the left back, and people will be who? This is what Brighton do though, isn't it, Trev? They buy random names from South America that people are like, let's be honest, who'd ever heard of Estupinian before he came? And now he's like, he's one of the good left backs in the Premier League, isn't it? It's what Brighton do. They are the club at going and buying these players, developing them and selling them on. And where this player isn't maybe, say, a belabor level of well-known, it is one to keep an eye on. And the final one I'll give you, just because we always like to give something a little bit different, Fulham have renewed 3 players in Harry Wilson, Adama Traore and Raul Jimenez. They've acted the 1-year extensions on there. West Ham have let Creswell go. But Ryan Reynolds, Wrexham, one of the players that hasn't renewed yet at Fulham is probably going to go is Tom Kearney, who's been a lot on Monday Night Football with Carragher and others this way. Wrexham in the Championship under Ryan Reynolds and that Rob McElhenney, couldn't think of the guy. That's the other one, the celebrity, big, are offering players 50 grand a week to play in the Championship. That is going to be part of their model. That they're not looking to do any particular big spend. It's come and be part of this project, come and get a bit of money, a bit of retirement pension, etc., and be part of the glamour of associating with us as well. So, yeah, just watch out for a few others being offered big wages on a free by Wrexham.
That's a lovely. I love the way you snuck that one in and didn't tell me about it. That's a great story. Love that. Absolutely love that. And just before we go to the last section of the show, for the record as well, I see some people talking about Liverpool and strikers. And yeah, I mean, we just go from show to show with the stories that are around. Everyone's aware we're going to have to get a striker. That's just a given. The Wirtz thing, the Wharton thing, it's new news. So that's why we're dealing with it today. You may have noticed we do at least 2 of these a week now because everything's mental. We have a couple of European stories left then to wrap us up. So we'll start off in Germany with Bayern, who we know that they're obviously the favourites for the kid we mentioned earlier on, Florian Wirtz. But there's a lot that needs to go on there. And you mentioned as well that they may not just be as sort of ready to spend without getting some money back. And so that's going to be an interesting thing too. And we know that there was a couple of lads, high-profile lads, let go recently. We spoke about them. Tommy Muller and is probably the biggest. But there are agents doing deals and trying to get their lad to stay around. Super agents, even if you don't mind. And we know that there's a couple of links where they want to get some people in as well. So just talk us through what's happening with Bayern, ins and outs.
Probably for all the stuff that's happened and all the bits around Wirtz that we've talked about before, the most interesting bit I got from one of our best Bundesliga sources, there aren't many, don't get me wrong, but able to stood up that Bayern's plan was never to get Wirtz this summer, as people are suggesting. Bayern wanted to wait another year and then get Wirtz. That was always the plan because of how much they're trying to do or already trying to do this summer. We've talked about the big renewals for the Musialas, the big, Neuer getting the extension and Kimmich getting an increase as well and all those things. And there's other names they're still trying to renew, as we mentioned, that Daya Upamecano's wanting an increase in a renewal as well, so they've got that to sort. Now, I'll kind of jump on and come back because we mentioned Leroy Sané, didn't we? And his new super agent switching to PD Xavi, and Bayern offered him a wage reduction. And that was kind of on the verge of getting done with his old management, with his old agent. But obviously he signed with old Penny, who's gone, whoa, slow the train. Like, my client's an elite star. Like, let's just get this right before we do it. And I mean, that's even out today. And people will make their own judgments on something from Florian Plettenberg. But if you look at the time that's come out in the last few hours, that currently no intention he's got of accepting that latest offer. And I had obviously, we talking earlier in the week that our info was not only that, Penny started going like, Premier League clubs, would you be interested, or what would you pay Leroy Sané on a free type of thing? So that there's that in the mix as well. So you throw that in there, and Jonathan Tah. It's quite clear that, Bayern have made him an offer. They want him to come in, almost as like an Eric Dyer style replacement, one in, one out for a centre half. But he's not given them a clear yes yet. And it's just different in Germany, isn't it? Because Max Eberl this morning was facing the press about it and saying, like, we've put a time limit on it. We're not going to give Sané forever, trying to play that brinkmanship game. Mentions Wirtz and says, if he wants to go to Liverpool, Manchester, like, and meet friends or see things, that's completely up to him. So it doesn't look very smooth, shall we say, at Bayern Munich right now. And being completely honest on this, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for us, because it might just be they've got so much to sort. We already said they've got to be careful about balancing the books. And now all of a sudden they might have to find another 120 million if they do get the go ahead for Florian Wirtz as well. So all these things are quite interesting, I think, at the moment. And this is going to sound bizarre, but I know we talked about this before. I kind of want Sané to renew, because the worry for me is if Sané doesn't renew and goes, that's a fair chunk off the wage bill for Bayern all of a sudden. And you're thinking, yeah, they've got a bit of money there freed up, haven't they, etc. So that will be one to keep an eye on. But yeah, Bayern Munich, I wouldn't say they're in a pickle, but they've got a lot to do still.
Yeah, and when you factor in the fact that it's a tremendous, as we call it around here, rat's nest of just a viper, just a den of vipers in there in the background, people ready to hack each other's back off. If I was Vinny Company, I'd be the least secure man in the world. I know we've just seen signs of him celebrating, but they want more there. They want more there. So it's, as you say, the more stress that's on them, the better. They are a direct European rival, and I expect us under Slot to have learned a lesson or two. And people lean into Arne needing to learn lessons and being naive in Europe and forget that we absolutely blitzed the Champions League first stage.
Yeah,
the best club in the competition, and then we came up against the crowd who are likely going to win it. So let's not be too harsh on the lad, but I absolutely expect us to be very successful in that competition next season, and anything that's bringing down a rival is a good thing. We have a little bit of sort of, I suppose, a bit of a throwback, an ex-Red in Bobby, who has had some success in Saudi, and it appears that Bobby's not ready to hang up his boots just yet, Dave.
No, a couple of ex-Reds, probably one far more loved than the other, but Bobby is set to leave Al Ali, I think it's pronounced, isn't he? His Saudi club. So doing a bit of digging on this, that there is a few offers from Europe, so be interested to see where Bobby ends up. But the Firmino family are actually looking to go back to Brazil. Is their first preference. So, but again, and nothing wrong with this because we adore Bobby. Can they pay the wages Bobby's looking for to go back there? But that is apparently the first port of call there. And the second one, he never played for us, but he almost had a career after us, didn't he? Suso, he played like 4 games or something, didn't he? We thought he was going to be a world superstar back in our desperate days, but it never happened. That he is leaving Sevilla on a free. And someone who's made an offer to him is a number of Saudi clubs. So maybe in his last real contract, Suso might just secure the bag, so to speak.
Yeah, good luck to him. Get the old generational wealth into you there, Suso. Xavi Simons, who's your favourite player in the world, we know. And listen, realistically, Xavi Simons' stories will start floating around because we know the kid wants out of his current situation. It looks like it's all but done that he will leave. And it's a matter of where he goes to. And I don't know why you and I are just both not massively enthused about the guy being part of our setup. It's probably unfair, actually, when I think about it. But he will have offers, Dave. He's a highly rated footballer. What's the latest?
Yeah, he's made his decision. He's definitely leaving Leipzig. His agents, the camp are confirming that to all who will listen. I can't lie or be hypocritical. I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of the kids. You can't start lying. This is not the player's fault either. But I think Xavi Simons, from the info we've got, is a lot of people's backup plan.
Yeah.
If you don't get Wirtz, you go for Simons and things like that, which sounds harsh and it doesn't make him a bad player, but it doesn't get you excited like a Wirtz for me. And listen, there's nothing, if he comes in and he joins Liverpool, of course I want him to turn out and prove me wrong and smash the words back down my throat and be the best player. Of course I do. But City, Liverpool, Bayern Munich are all the big ones linked with Xavi Simons. Now, who is quite clearly their first choice target in that area, or someone who can play like a 10, a false 9? We all know they're in for Wirtz, doesn't it? So it does feel like, it sounds harsh, but Xavi Simons is almost the backup prize a little bit if you can't get your first choice. Just being honest on that.
I love it. He's Aldi Wirtz, is what you're saying. Fair play to him. And we'll finish with Barcelona's story. The Levermeisters are going to have to do their usual creativity, but they have just had some serious success, confirmed recently as champions, which I presume brings a little bit of a bag with it. And as a result, they're probably going to keep in situ the man who's won them their league. And, that would be very wise, I would have thought, because you watch Barca now and they are a hugely entertaining team to watch. Yeah. And it looks as if whatever he's doing there, whatever the sort of chemistry is working. So talk to us about Barca, about the manager. And is there any links that you've heard with footballers, including and not restricted to Liverpool footballers?
Yeah. Now they've won the league and they obviously beat Real Madrid to it. They've got those finances confirmed, finishing top. They are going to confirm, because now they can afford it, to renew Hansi Flick till 2027. So he'll get another 2-year extension there as well. So everything's happy there. And I also put that picture on the screen because he was asked what was his favourite bit. And it was when the 4 Clasico wins they've had this season. And just because Real Madrid are pissing us off a bit this summer, aren't they? With Bren, Huijsen and everything like that. It's just nice to see Real Madrid get it stuck to them a little bit there as well. However, we can usually get Barca info from a specific, person, let's put it that way. And we've given it before and it's proven to be right as well. The only thing that we had this week, which I don't like, especially, well, I don't know if I do like, people will have their thoughts on this, but also that person came back to us and said the talk is accelerating again around Luis Diaz now and Barcelona being interested in him and going from there. So we'll have to see, because you never know what happens with their finances. 1 minute there'll be a forgotten electricity bill, won't they? Or Laporta's bill for and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is true. And one of the best stories I heard about 3 weeks ago, for all the bills Barca settled in terms of what they had to catch up, one was a dry cleaning bill and one was for adult entertainment. So they settled up a lot with this win, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Well, lots of people reckon that watching Barca is like porn anyway, so I guess we'll go with that. Let's wrap it up, Dave, because there's usually at least one thing that you've held in reserve, and if not, I want to give you the last word anyway. We are getting to a stage where it's very exciting. It's lovely to watch the stories of us being linked with in a very real way and not monitoring, not sort of interested in, not watching briefs, actually talking to lads like Florian Wirtz. That's a great sign. And we've had summer after summer of chasing lads who have ultimately not arrived at the club. But that doesn't mean you stop. And it is a slightly new era now, isn't it? And who's to know what will come of it? So I'm finding it all very exciting, I have to say. Maybe I'm just in a very positive mood. And I'm going to be Ned at the end of the season because, honest to God, up the Reds, we are champions. It's fantastic. I haven't enjoyed it half enough. I want to leave you with the last word, my friend. What is your general take? And is there any little extra bit you want to throw in at the end here?
Tijuana Tacos. We said since the start of this summer, Liverpool are after an elite attacker.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, no, they've not. And look what's borne out in terms of stuff that's come out around Isak, Alvarez. Now, Liverpool are after an elite attacker. That will define Liverpool's summer, won't it? Because we could get Frimpong, Kirkes and others, but without being derogatory, and people can judge this how they want. But if the attackers say Sesko, for instance, I think that'll be a bit underwhelming, won't it, for a lot of people? So Liverpool are all these names we talked about, the alternatives, they're not set on a course because the nerds, the geeks, whatever you want to call them, they're smart enough to know there's only so many elite players and the chances are quite small. So it's like, if we throw a dart at 10 elite players, can we just hit one? That's what we're after a little bit, which is what we're looking at. And I think people need to hold their nerve a little bit on this because everyone's entitled to opinion, but I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with hearing Liverpool is seriously going after Florian Wirtz. If anyone has, I'd question them a bit and think, why would you be bothered by that? We might not get him. But if we don't get him, let's not say if Wirtz is confirmed to Bayern Munich next week. Let's not go through the old rigmarole of, where's the Caicedo money, John? We're an amateur club. They're trying for these players. Let's see how the summer bears out. If it isn't Wirtz, I'll be a little sad for a second, but if there's another elite attacker comes in, I get over it quite quickly is probably the best way of putting it, Trev. So let's just wait and see what happens. But they're trying. But I get people are also going to say transfers and football is an outcome sport. So they've got to land that elite attacker this summer.
Yeah, look, it's the thing that pushes the unhinged button on most people, and it gets people to a stage where they're not very rational. And I'll include, we're as guilty of being lured into this, but too many years, Dave, of doing stuff like this has left us a little bit. Look, we're optimistically skeptical, I suppose, is the place to be. And I think it's probably the healthiest spot to be in as well. If there's a little bit of hope, I'm all for it. If it doesn't work out, like you said, my friend, so be it.
Do you know what? The final bit I'll say, I'll do a second one like Jerry Springer's final thought. Sorry. is that, remember last summer, just what we've had this week alone was pretty much the entirety of last summer when we were scratching around going like, remember we were going like the Reds, we were prodding them like that mean, like do something, like with the stick. Like, whereas already we're seeing like Frimpong lined up, Alvarez being spoken to, Isak being the start, Wirtz, like Wharton. This is more than we got pretty much the entirety of last summer, and the window hasn't even started yet officially. So just keep that in the mind.
So much more than we had. As you said, it was all poking the dead thing with a stick. This is so much better. You're dead right. Before we leave, because I know he'll listen to this, Gibbo, where's my T-shirt? Why don't I have a T-shirt, Gibbo?
Take care of the stars and it'll all work. Gibbo.
Hey. Come on here. Right, let's wrap it up here. Thanks to Dave. I've been Trev. This is the Transfer Show, and we will speak to you very soon, no doubt. Take care.